have, I would consider my friend, Miss Bridget McGowen-Hawkins, and I cannot wait for you all to hear all about her. So, Bridget, first of all, welcome. And I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, but please tell us something that they're not going to read in your bio or find on your website.
Ooh, okay. Yes, I've got something for you. First off, thank you so much for having me on the show, Tish. Really excited for this conversation, especially how it came about when we saw each other at an event and you were like, I've got to have you on the show. So thank you so much. So my name is Bridget McGowen-Hawkins. Here's something you will not find in my bio. I drive with both feet and I drive an automatic car. There's
Oh,
one thing.
Lord. Can you say more, please? I need to understand why that is.
When I learned to drive, and I learned to drive at the age of 12, when I learned to drive, it made absolutely zero sense to me to have 2 feet, two pedals in the car, and to use only one foot for both stopping and accelerating. It made absolutely no sense. I truly believe my ability to stop quickly is greater than the average person who drives with one foot because I drive with that left foot covering the brake. So at any moment's notice, I'm
You're,
stopping the
you're,
car.
why you have me wondering, why don't we drive with 2 feet? It kind of does make sense now that you mention it. I used to drive a stick, so I drove with 2 feet, of course, but yeah, that does actually make sense. I don't know. I don't know. I've been doing it too long to try it now, but
I know, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
oh, that is extremely interesting for sure. Bridget, again, and for those of y'all in the audience who may or may not have heard our previous episodes together, I've been on her podcast. She's been on my previous podcast before this one. So I know a little bit about Bridget, but I want to kind of just update the audience and make sure that they are also aware. Number one, tell us a little bit more about what you do professionally, both as far as I know you're speaking and publishing. Give them a little bit of a bird's eye view into the world of who Bridget is.
Absolutely. The speaking really led into the publishing. It all fits together quite nicely. So since 2001, I've been a professional speaker, an award-winning international professional speaker. But it was in 2016 when I got laid off from corporate America. My whole team was disbanded, Tish. And I was wondering, what am I going to do now? Yeah, I had a nice severance and all that good stuff. And I said, you know what? I have been traveling the country, doing all these presentations, doing webinars and so on when I was in corporate America. I'm going to keep doing that. So I kept doing these professional speaking gigs, if you will, and it became my full-time endeavor, engagement. Now, it was in 2019 when I was getting ready to present at a conference where Oprah was also presenting. Tish, we're talking about 13, 14,000 people. Yes, I'm name dropping. We're talking about a huge crowd. Let me get it in my Oprah voice. Huge crowd. And they said, Bridget, do you have a book to sell in the bookstore? Now, Tish, I had no book. I had no plans to write a book. I had no outline. I had no manuscript, but I had boldness. And I said, yeah, sure. The thing is, Tish, you know how we are. You stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Kind of like that driving with 2 feet. Yeah, I
Yes.
think that's what that's all about. You stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I've been blogging for about 3 years at that
Yes.
point on the topic that I was going to be speaking on. I
Mhm.
also had been writing LinkedIn newsletters, articles, all kinds of content. So I had tens of thousands of words to pull from. I pulled it all together, found an editor, typesetter, cover designer, all the things. And I had that book ready in a matter of weeks. The
Yeah.
book ends up selling out at the conference. I said, Bridget, you might be onto something. In
Yeah.
December of 2019, I opened Press 49, where now I publish the works of other professional speakers,
Yes.
other business owners, entrepreneurs, and so on to have their words shine both in their practices and in books.
I love it so much. I've just watched this just journey, kind of take place, and it's been so amazing. And I see you doing both things so very well. And I know, and you actually helped my family to get through some difficult times in 2020. because you had us to write. I think it was supposed to have been me writing a part of that anthology after George Floyd had been murdered. And I ended up asking the men in my family to talk to me about what it was to be a Black man in America. And when I say I learned so much about them writing that chapter, it was amazing. And it also, I think, brought us closer because we were able to discuss difficult topics that we just weren't having those kind of conversations, you know what I mean, as a family. And it caused us to begin to have those kind of conversations. And I know that's not what we're here to necessarily talk about, but I think it's important to kind of share that you really gave us the opportunity to open up that conversation that most of America was not having at the time.
The book you're talking about, the anthology you're talking about, published by Press 49, is A Collective Breath, the award-winning A Collective Breath, where I had just opened the publishing company. We had been in business about 5 months at the time of George Floyd's murder. And
Mhm.
I was having conversations with my husband, who is a Black man. And I just said, I've got this publishing company. I know Black people. I know they're having conversations or may need to have the kinds of conversations you and I are having. We were just talking about what is it like to be a Black man? Yes, I'm a Black woman, but they are two
Mhm.
different experiences. And so I reached out
Yeah,
to a number of people. Not everybody joined in for a variety of reasons, but I'm so thankful to contributors like you who joined in. You had those conversations with the men in your lives and added a chapter to the book. And that's one of my proudest moments as a publisher, because it's not
yeah,
just about putting books out there, but it's really thinking
yeah,
about the messages you're putting out there. So yeah, so proud and pleased.
absolutely. I also wonder, because of your vast experience as a speaker, how important do you think speaking is to the sales process? There are many people who either, they sell for their business or they speak. And there's people like myself and many people that you work with, I'm sure, that use speaking as part of basically a lead generator, a way to establish expertise. How important do you think it is? And tell us why people should utilize speaking as part of their sales process.
There's only so many people on social media, and so many people who will see your posts on social media. And it's about creating a wider reach. It is about reaching those people and speaking to people via different channels. And so, like I said, you have the social media posts, you have the networking events, you have the different communities that you have a membership with. Yeah, I know we're both members of a couple of different organizations, right? And each one of those gives you a different type and size of microphone. But
Mm,
when you're able to get on a stage and you're the only one on that microphone,
yeah.
you can touch and reach audiences, different types of audiences in a different way. So maybe they saw you at a chamber event, or they saw you at a business event, and maybe you chatted in passing, or maybe you got to sit next to each other in a session or something. But then that same person might hear you speak from the stage and you share a personal story. You share a transformation that you had with a client. You give them what it was like to go from 0 to 100, not knowing exactly what you were going to do, but somehow you connect with them differently when you are speaking. I think it's huge. And you don't have to be this trained professional speaker who's gone to school and gotten this formal education and such.
Right.
You have a message, you have expertise. You need to get on that microphone.
I love it. I absolutely, and I firmly agree. I just know because in my business, Bridget, I tend to attract more introverted, believe it or not, entrepreneurs who need to sell, but pretty much they need to find a way to sell in a way that makes them feel still themselves, right? Not in authentic and all of those things. So many of them, when I talk to them about speaking, as part of their sales process, recoil. And they're just like, yeah, we got to think of something else. That's just not what I'm going to do. What would you say to that person?
To stop that, here's reason number one. I am an introvert.
Me too. Me too. Yes. Yeah.
So stop using that as some sort of an excuse or some sort of a crutch. You get your energy from being alone. That's all that means. Being introverted is totally different from being shy. Now, if you are shy, then I say maybe you don't get on a stage and there's thousands of people in the audience, but maybe you do more speaking like this on podcasts. Or
Yeah.
maybe you get on panels and have panel discussions. So the whole 60 minutes of the session isn't just your voice, but you get to share it with others and it's not so intimidating. But get past that self-limiting belief.
I love it.
Get past that self-doubt that you cannot do it because you're fill in the blank. You're
Mhm.
short. You don't like your voice. You're introverted. You're shy. Okay, well, find another avenue.
That's it
Maybe
right there.
yeah, maybe you're not getting, in these ginormous halls, but find some kind of way where your voice is reaching more people than your current circle.
So first of all, I want to make sure those of you all who are listening, I hope you heard that because again, we think speaking, we automatically think at a conference on a stage by yourself with 3,000 eyes staring right back at you. And that's not necessarily the only way that you can speak. Personally, I'm like, this is speaking. That means I can do it in the comfort of my home. I don't have to do it live. You can, but you don't have to do it live. You can record it and stop that recording and start all over again as many times as you need to, but your message has to get out. I'm so glad that you said that because I think that many people kind of box in what speaking really looks like and feel like that's just not their game and they're just not going to play it at all. They're not going to do it. What would you say then, Bridget? Because I know for certain that you go to, and I don't know how much of it you're still doing, but I know over the course of your career, you've gone into many corporate entities and spoken to their teams, worked with companies, and that's been a part of your livelihood. How do people utilize this type of work, whether it's speaking or training, getting on podcasts? How would you tell someone to utilize it as part of their sales process? What I mean by that is, what do they do after they get on that stage? What do they do
Yes.
to get the business, right? Once their voice has been heard, how do they acquire the business thereafter?
There are a couple of different ways. So one is going to be giving the audience a clear call to action before you are done.
Yeah.
The call to action or the CTA is that answer to the question that is in everybody's mind. Okay, that was nice. Now what? That's what
Now.
your audience is subconsciously thinking. And so you give them a deliberate now what? Maybe it is to schedule a discovery call with you, sign up for your email list, go buy your book, attend the book signing that's afterwards, exchange business cards with you, attend your next event, have a very clear CTA. And let me add on to that. At the end, don't do it at the very end of your presentation. Think about when you were in college and you attended a class that went from 1 until 150. At 149, you're shutting down.
Yeah.
Do not give the audience this very important CTA at the last minute. Weave it in right before you make your last big point, your last big story, your last closing piece. And then give them the CTA, then close out. That's one way. Another way to use this in business and to build that pipeline is if you have been called in and contracted by someone to speak, make sure before you even have the speaking engagement, Tish, make sure you already have on the calendar a follow-up call with your point of contact. And that follow-up call ideally needs to take place within 48 hours of that speaking engagement. And here's why. You've done this great job. They're excited, they're jazzed, they're energized, they love you. You don't want that feeling to wane and don't have that follow-up call until 2 or 3 weeks later. Now, sometimes it is what it is. They're out of the office, they're traveling, they have an emergency, but get it on the calendar before the engagement. Just make that part of the process. You
Right.
got the engagement on the calendar. The next step is to get the follow-up call on the calendar. In that follow-up call, ask questions like, how did it go? Based on my preliminary thoughts, seems like it was great. Big question. Ask them, what organizations are they members of?
Yeah.
Will they make introductions? between you and those organizations so you can get your foot into more doors. So those are two ways to use speaking engagements as a way to fill that pipeline.
I love that so much. I'll tell you two of the most, I guess, impactful things that I've done over the course of the years that has really helped me to secure new clients after I've spoken is to have an after hours event. And that just means at the event, say, hey, I'm going to sit down for coffee with, let's just say 12 people. And while I'm speaking, I want you to write down all the questions that you have, or if you find something you really want to discuss more in depth, let's talk about it thereafter. And 99% of the time, probably 70% of those people have signed up for a program of some sort because they got a little more extra time, right?
Yes.
The other thing, and I'm going to give these people a plug. They're not paying me for it, though they might after this, but I don't know. But there's a app called Talkadot. Are you familiar with Talkadot? So
Yes.
Talkadot, I've used them for about a year now. And for those of you all who are listening, who are speakers and want to use speaking as part of your sales process, Talkadot is an app that literally gives them real-time opportunity to give you a review. Takes 2 minutes to do it, but the most important part of that review is that it asks, do you know anyone who needs me to come speak to their organization? Are you the decision maker in your organization and you would like to have me come back and speak to another department? You know, those types of questions. Would you like to talk about inviting me to another conference or event? So those things, I generally walk out of an event with 2 to 3 more speaking engagements as well. So I love what you said, and these tools that I've used have been fantastic also. Any other thing come up for you that, as I'm saying that, you'd love for people to consider doing when they're speaking to make sure that they're securing new business, Bridget?
Right. Yeah. I have to second your points about Talkadot and getting that information. Everybody just go check it out.
Yeah.
It's super cool depending on the kind of engagement that you're delivering. Let me think, what else would I recommend? Even when you get people signed up on your email list, because I had thrown that out there as a possible CTA, making sure you're nurturing that list and making sure that there is an invitation. I mean, tell people how to act. Tell
Yeah.
people what you want them to do. So if you're wanting them to sign up, if you're wanting them to book calls with you, make sure that you're including that on the list. But those are probably the big ones that I tend to use in terms of securing business. Of course, there is my virtual assistant that I use, but that's not necessarily connected to speaking. But
Right.
she does a lot of work in terms of prospecting for me and finding business. But when it comes to from the stage, those are probably the two big ones for me, is booking those follow-up calls and then
Yeah.
putting that very clear CTA and having those conversations, of course, after the presentation.
I love that so much. And I'm going to put you on the spot. And if you want to think
Yeah.
about it, we can come back to it. It's no big deal. But because I know this is what you do, someone asked me recently about that CTA.
Yeah.
And basically they were saying that they weren't getting much response from their CTA. And I told them that their CTA needs to be powerful enough to where people actually want to do it. Are there any things that you feel like work better than others when it comes to some type of a CTA from the stage? I know you mentioned, of course, booking a discovery call or anything. Do you feel like one kind of stands out above others?
Well, I will say this, and I think part of it is delivery, part of it is personality, part of it could be topic, part of it could be your audience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it could be, depending on at what point in the conference people are at. So
Yeah.
if you're presenting at a conference, it's a 4-day conference, and you're presenting in one of the last slots on day 4, you may have conference fatigue at play,
Yeah.
right? So it could be a number of things. So here's one thing that when it comes to the CTA, I think is incredibly important. In addition to making sure it's not the very last thing you say, that is crucial. So
Yeah.
I would invite people who are saying, it's not working for me, I'm not seeing the results that I want. I would encourage you to examine at what point you're giving the CTA. That's number one. Number two, and this is probably equally important. I need you to examine how you deliver it. It needs to
Yeah.
be as much a part of the presentation as all the content that you've delivered. And I
Yeah.
need you to practice it because it can feel uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
here, I'll just, rattle it off for you. I've not practiced it in some time, but I'm getting ready to practice it because that big conference where Oprah was, I'm
Yes.
getting ready to go to that conference again. So I got to get the commercial down. I like to call it a commercial. So
Mhm.
I'll get to my last point, and I'll say, are y'all enjoying this session? Yes. Fantastic. Do not keep this session a secret. This session is available in person, online. I can deliver it to organizations. I can deliver it to your team, and we can customize it to fit exactly what you're looking for. And I promise you 100%, it's going to be one of the best times your colleagues ever had engaging in professional development. You want to talk about how to get this session delivered to your team? Oh, let's exchange cards at the end of the session, or let's whatever, fill in the blank, whatever it is you want to do. And then I move on to
Yeah.
my last point. But it's got to be as engaging and as exciting, and it's got to be delivered with the same energy as everything else. A lot of times people will get to the CTA, Tish, and then all of a sudden they shift and they become some different person. And and they become
Absolutely.
dry and stale and nervous and scared, and you're
Yes.
scaring
Or they
the audience
rush
off.
through it. Yeah, they rush through it. It's like they're doing their thing. They're like, by the way, make sure you pick up the, and I'm just like, no, 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 no. Make me want this. Give me some energy behind it, right? Oh
So
my
I will
goodness.
say that's worked well for me. I make it, and I actually have a slide where I have a little character, if you will, that's holding its finger up to its lips. And as I'm saying, don't keep this a secret, I
Yeah.
even make it part of the session.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel disjointed. It doesn't feel uncomfortable. But the most important part of it not feeling uncomfortable is the fact that I practice it. So it sounds natural, it flows, and I give people a chance to think and say yes. And every question that you're asking during this commercial, if you will, it needs to lead to the audience saying yes. I know a fellow
Mhm.
speaker who does that. He will say things or ask guiding questions, and every question, the answer is a yes. He will even say yes to prompt the
Yeah.
audience to say yes. So as you're doing your commercial, do you want more of this? Do you think your teams would love this? Has this been helpful? Right? Those kinds of questions that build the excitement, that have them feeling good and have them thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind a little bit more of this.
Yes, yes, yes. So, Bridget, how do you think those types of techniques translate to one-to-one conversations, maybe thereafter, when now you're trying to close the deal, whether it's with a corporate, organization or with, someone else that you're trying to now enroll into whatever that program is that you might be selling? How do you think that translates?
Yes, asking them, what challenges are they facing? What resonated with you from the presentation that had you say, yeah, I've got to go have a conversation, right? So making it connect,
Yeah,
pulling pieces from what they just heard, and then asking them what's going on in their world. What would they like to see changed? What kinds of professional development do they offer? But just really, bringing it down. You're not on a stage, you're not on a microphone, but it's just a one-on-one conversation and saying, okay, what's going on? What's happening with you? What do you do? What kind
yeah,
of what does your team do? What has you? I tend to do sessions on presentation skills. What has you, needing to, kind of get some presentation skills strategies, but really asking more questions and listening more than you talk is what's going to be incredibly important. And then use their words, whatever they're responding to you with.
yeah,
Let's say that they tell you, oh, my team, they're incredibly knowledgeable, but they start the presentations off wrong. I don't know. So then
yeah,
as you're responding to them, oh, starting the presentations off wrong, yeah, that can be tough. Well, I've got some strategies. I'd love to sit down and talk with you. And don't start like trying to teach them right there
right,
in that conversation. And don't
right.
even try to start selling them so much, or at least not directly. Have a
Yeah,
conversation so they can get to know you on a one-to-one
mm,
way, right?
yeah,
Because you've been up on the stage and that's one to many. So they
yeah,
know you in that capacity, but let them feel you and see you as a human and just start building the relationship, because you're not going to solve all of their problems right then and there. So don't turn that conversation into a coaching session. You've got a
right.
long line of people waiting, uh, you know, schedule another call, but say, I'd really love to discuss it a little bit more with you. Make it a conversation, listen more than you talk, use their words back in the conversation.
Love that. So, I mean, I already know we're going to have a part two without a doubt, because I'm looking at the clock going, oh, but I have more questions. Okay, I want to switch gears just a little bit, because as a publisher, obviously, I know that many of the people who come to you also have businesses, and they utilize their book as really establishing expertise, that so that when they go to, whatever their professional endeavor is, it really does kind of solidify who they are. How important do you think having a book is for an entrepreneur, for a business owner, for a high-level professional, in order to really establish that expertise? And what would you recommend for those who don't have them right now?
I'll answer the first question, the second question first, I should say.
Yes.
My recommendation is go through your content, get to writing, and call me in the morning.
There you
That
go.
you need a book. For those who
Yes.
don't have one yet, you need a book, and here's why. The answer to question number one. I see the book establishing your credibility and solidifying you as the go-to person in your industry that can solve the problem that your target audience has. A book nowadays is an elevated business card. People might take your business card, they'll stick it in their pocket, they'll throw it in the trash, right? But a book, they're not likely to toss a book. That book is a unique marketing tool that you are not going to find anywhere, well, that you're not going to find everywhere, I should say. And the
Yes.
cool thing about having a book is it establishes you as an expert in your field. But at the same time, it can have people who are on the fence. They're not quite sure if they should work with you, but they're willing to risk $20 or $30 on your book. Open it up and see if you know your stuff. And then they tend to be more likely to want to get on that discovery call, to want to book a five-figure engagement with you. True story, Tish. That has happened to me a number of times where I will speak at a conference, and maybe I'm not being paid to speak at that conference, but people enjoy the session. They go buy my book. They'll even buy an extra copy for their boss or their decision maker. And in a matter of days, I'm on the phone with the decision maker. And then a day or two later, we're signing a five-figure contract. True
Wow.
story. And it's happened more than once.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you said that, because people sometimes don't want to put in the effort that they think it's going to take to write the book. I don't know what to say. I don't know who's going to read it, all of these things. But you said something earlier in our conversation that I think is worth bearing, because you just said gather your content. You said you'd written multiple blogs, and you basically took those blogs and then transformed it into a book. That's how I wrote my book. That's exactly how I wrote my book. And so I think people need to hear that. You probably have more content available for this book than you might think. And it's not as difficult as you probably have made up in your mind, because it can lead to new business. I love that. And you all help people to do that. Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct. We have ghostwriters, we have writing coaches, whatever you want. And I want people to think about this. Oftentimes, when we think about writing a book, we think about novels, we think about Harry Potter, we think about these tomes.
Yeah.
But business books, nonfiction books, do not have to be written like a novel. With that book that I wrote back in 2019, it won an award. It's now in its second edition, and the second edition won an award in 2023. I know,
Wow.
bloating a bit.
That's
With
amazing.
that, with that book, I pulled the best of the best. I categorized it into 4 sections. And no, it doesn't read like a novel. It's not supposed to. You're
Right.
supposed to look at the table of contents, and I have people do this, especially when I do smaller workshops with 20, 30 people. I tell them toward the end of the workshop, look at the table of contents, put a tick mark next to at least 5 topics that you definitely want to read on the plane ride home. And
Mhm.
so it's not meant to be read from cover to cover. So I want you to stop thinking about a book in terms of, oh, I've got to have this plot and these characters, and I've got to write 50,000 words in a month.
Ah,
No, pull the different ideas, and then you can create themes. As a matter of fact, we have a free download at press49.com where I talk about several different ways to organize your book so it doesn't feel daunting. Tish, I did a book. It's Show Up and Show Out, 52 communication habits to make you even more unforgettable. And it's just got 52 lessons, thoughts,
yeah.
strategies, tips. It's not this book, this novel. It's not this. No, It's just 52, and each one of these 52 tips has, I don't know, maybe 100, 200 words of giving you some advice for how to be a more powerful communicator. So start thinking about your book differently than how you think about a book, and break it down in a way that is just more manageable. Make it a book you would want to read.
Mm. You are really helping this audience right now. And I'm thinking now, because I have another book on tap that I need to start writing as well. But similar, it's not designed to be, this long drawn out. It's literally just designed to give sales, sales tools. So we'll have to talk about that. And for those of you all who are listening, and now you understand how easy writing a book could be, you need to reach out to Bridget. Can you give them that? I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the Show Up and Show Out book, I wrote it on a plane ride. I wrote it, I just sat down and cranked out 52 tips. It was one, I think maybe I did it on the round trip. I don't think it was just one way, but the whole trip, round trip was maybe about, I don't know, 7, 8 hours, 3 hours one way, about 4 coming back. You got that headwind coming back west, but I digress. The website, you could tell somebody travels entirely too much.
Right.
You know the drill. You know the drill. You got the frequent flyer miles to prove it. The website is press49.com, PRESS 49.com. Get that free download so you can look at the different ways that a book can be organized, a nonfiction book can be organized. And I promise you, you're going to say, I never thought about that. Yeah. And it makes it so easy for you to just start writing.
I love that so much. You reminded me of something when I did I want to say my last conference, maybe not the last one, but one of my larger conferences. I was saying something on the stage, and when I said it, I immediately said, that's book title. And from the audience, someone says, when are we going to be able to read that book? And I literally got challenged in the conference to write the book. I wrote that book in 3 days because, similar to you, I've been writing content, doing lots of posts. I just was able to gather all of that content, have it crafted really quick. That's my networking is not a one-night stand book. And so I get it. I'm so glad that you gave us tips that we can put into practice right now, all of them. And I cannot wait to have you back because we have more to talk about. We have a lot more to talk about. And I know we're already over time, but thank you so much for being here, Bridget. Beyond, I'm going to press49.com. Is there any other ways you'd like people to reach out to you?
Sure. So visit connectwithb.com. Connect with B, CONNECT, with B.com. And you'll find all of my social media handles, link to my podcast, all of my books, all of my articles, all the ways that I show up in cyberspace. Please connect with me. I love hanging out with people via LinkedIn, Facebook, and the like. So connectwithb.com.
I love it so much. You have heard it from the very mouth of Bridget McGowen-Hawkins, and I cannot wait for you all to not only tell us what you thought about this, but get that download and reach out to her when you're ready to start that book. Bridget, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tish, and thank you to the listeners.